Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Trader Talk. We're here with our friend Charty Man Dan, who's just got back from the beach, and we're ready to dive into some charts.
Absolutely glad to be back and nice and refreshed, ready to dive into the top 10.
The top 10 are all tightening up, and we're going to go over the fundamentals. What's the news that's been driving the top 10, and what direction are they going to break as we get some pretty tightening patterns here, Dan?
Things are going to pick up within the next couple of weeks, and we're the way that everybody's tightening up and correlating to each other, we're probably going to see a whole lot of action pick up in the entire cryptocurrency space at the same time. So things will heat up soon.
Cool. I think we're going to start off with Bitcoin, aren't we? And I think you're right. All the traders certainly want a bit more action.
Yep. Here is Bitcoin on the daily time frame. And then we'll look at we'll start at the weekly first. So as we know, the weekly chart continues to tighten, and we're getting to a point where we pretty much just can't go sideways. And someone asked in one of my comments earlier, why can't we just trade sideways for the next 3 months? And that's just not the way markets work. I've never seen it happen in 8 years. We reach a point where the rubber band gets pulled so tight, and there's going to be a big spike in volume and volatility. It's just the way that markets work. So we know that time's coming. We've got a couple weeks, I would say, before we're going to see that volatility. And right now on the daily time frame, it does favor the bears. We did hold a support level with a double bottom, and the bulls did show up as soon as that support was tested, but we're still fading down towards that support, and it's certainly not done being tested just yet. So the bulls are on their heels. They're attempting to hold this support, and the bears are going to do their best tonight to push through. And if that does occur, we're going to be looking back down towards the low 6,000 range, and we're going to see if the bulls can show up again to defend that 6,000 psychological level.
Yeah, everyone had their hopes on that ETF, and you could see that tightening in the charts. And then we got that decision where it was kind of a bit of an unofficial delayed back till December. And you can kind of see that again in the charts that people are saying, oh, was this good or this bad? And we don't really have any big news items that have determined a bull break or a bear break. And I think it would have to be something pretty big in either direction, because I don't think we're going to make new lows just for the sake of it, and I don't think we're going to break the downtrend either. So that's why we just see that everyone's kind of holding their breath, waiting for some big news to drop. And we've seen in the past, and I know you've spoken about it, sometimes we get those news items to coincide with the technical patterns and force that break.
Yeah, I definitely would not be surprised to have that be a little spark that is a catalyst. And then once things are so tight, all these traders have their orders that just, have an effect off of each other, a bit of a chain reaction. So if it's a bull break, the shorts cover, the bulls buy, that moves things quickly. And likewise, if it's a bear break, some long sell and some shorts pile in. But I definitely think the risk to reward is favoring the bulls at this point, in terms of if we get that bull break, the kind of upside we could see.
Maybe it's the backed exchange announcing their first few customers or the first investors, something like that.
Yep, if they're on time in November, that would be ideal for the bulls. So next, we're going to look at Ethereum. Ethereum is definitely weaker. So if we look at the weekly time frame, we're not in an equilibrium pattern. It's a potential bear flag. It's a 2-week bounce that was absolutely a solid move with solid bull volume behind it. But there's a lack of follow through. It's still just a very clear downtrend on the weekly. So we can't, sometimes I lump everything in the crypto space with each other because the correlations are so strong. But we have to, look at it as each individual coin, and Ethereum is weak. So the daily time frame is also in a tightening range, similar to Bitcoin, but even then it's a little bit weaker. So we're looking for a higher low on the daily chart to form compared to 203.24, and then we'll have a nice equilibrium that's probably going to hold until next week when we get a clear break of that. Of course, Bitcoin could influence things a bit, but as of right now, if you zoom out long term, that daily bounce, not very impressive.
I think what's interesting here is that Bitcoin did have that final capitulation, or the day when all the headlines were saying that it was dead. We had a big flush, a big buying and volume coming in. So we haven't really seen that for Bitcoin yet. So now it's interesting, if Bitcoin does break bearish and go lower, does Ethereum hold up better, or does it really just form new lows as well? So October and November has been historically a strong month with lots of conferences for Ethereum, DevCon 4 coming up. Lots of people working on scaling solutions, and at least 3 big companies now have implemented their own scaling solutions. So these things aren't years away as a lot of sort of people are worried about.
Yeah, I certainly remember, these months back in 2017, and there was a lot of hype around the conferences and Ethereum. So we'll see. We really just have to break that correlation, and checking in on that ETH BTC chart is how we, can get a better glimpse of who's stronger, who's weaker. And it looks very similar to the USD chart, but it's very clear that right now Bitcoin's a lot stronger than Ethereum.
Yeah, yeah.
XRP is next. So XRP, a lot of people were thinking, pump and dump when it first starts running out of nowhere. And for me, it was a multiple day run, and the amount of sheer volume behind it and the fact that we were seeing more dollar volume for XRP than for pretty much anybody else, that tells me that that move is for real. So at this point, we've seen a nice tightening pattern. Anytime you see a huge breakout or breakdown, you always look for an equilibrium after that. And that's what we're getting on the daily time frame. So our lower high was set at 624. And now we're looking for the bulls to attempt a higher low anywhere above 435. And we need to see a clear trend change on the 4-hour time frame back to the bulls in order for us to be convinced our daily higher low has been set. So another one that's a tightening range, but it is favoring the bulls. The weekly time frame did break a bunch of resistances, and that was really what sparked this entire cryptocurrency space getting a little bit of life, I would say. We didn't necessarily see a ton of bull breaks, but bulls got interested. There were some profits to be had, and we took out months of downtrend in just a few days.
Yeah, we saw that excitement leading into the Swell conference and the announcement of XRapid being ready within a month, and now we know 3 companies will be using that. So with Ripple, we know it's all down to the partnerships they form and who's actually going to be using XRP in their transactions, whether or not it succeeds. But there's a lot of excitement, and I did a couple of surveys recently, and there was a lot more people that were bullish or own XRP than I thought. So it certainly sort of changed, I think, a lot over the past 12 months, people's thoughts towards Ripple.
Next, we've got BCH, so Bitcoin Cash. It had its own little pump. So this is one of those names where we saw XRP get its pump, and then we saw Litecoin get a pump, and EOS and BCH. So this was a solid one as well. 2 big green days of volume. And because of that, we are not in a daily equilibrium pattern like other names. We have pulled back. We established a support level at 507. That's the most important short-term support. Every day since that's been established, we have a little mini higher low. And we're just looking at resistance of 550, which has a little bit of a double top twice in the past 3 days. And then back up to the high of that pump up at 591.88. And the good thing about these pumps that we did have on these names is there was opportunity in both directions. And that's what traders love to see. And some traders don't care about the direction. If they're not investing long-term, they'll take volatility wherever they can get it.
Yeah, so Bitcoin Cash has been the headlines from the Bitmain IPO, and I think that's what really started that most recent spike. We've also had the headlines about the division within the community, if there's going to be a hard fork on November 15th between the branches that want to add some functionality for smart contracts and increase the block size versus functionality to add tokens on the chain as well. And then we had a third camp come out and say, well, we don't want any changes. We just keep things the same if we can't agree. So it remains to be seen exactly how that's going to play out. And Bitcoin Cash is trying to get adoption for payments in a lot of developing countries, and that's what is going to determine its success, I think.
Interesting stuff. I was unaware of that fork date. I appreciate that. So EOS. EOS is yet again another tightening daily time frame. We've got our high of a bull move, our low of consolidation, lower high, higher low, and now multiple daily inside bars. So whenever I see a daily equilibrium pattern forming, there's 2 different ways you can act on it. If you want higher risk and higher reward, you're going to act on these multiple daily inside bars breaking. Or if you want less risk and less reward, you're going to wait for one of the more clear levels that's a bit further out. So right now, the key supports for me are 553 and then down to 532. And key resistance is 578 on up to 595.
Yeah, EOS has certainly had its issues since it launched. We had those RAM hoarding issues, and then most recently governance collusion about, the block producers. There's lots of money at stake here. I think one price I heard was up to $10 million a year if you're one of those block producers getting all those EOS as rewards. So whenever money's involved, there's going to be some sort of collusion. So let's see how that plays out. But at the same time, we're reading headlines that it's one of the most widely used high-performance blockchains at the moment. That's the choice of a lot of dApps. So let's see if EOS can sort out their issues.
So now we've got XLM, which yet again, a tightening daily range. We've got our high, low of the pullback, lower high. And this is one that had a bunch of very clear resistance levels, which we love as traders, because when it breaks and there's not a lot of clear levels right behind it, usually get a lot of follow through, both from shorts covering and bulls buying that clear resistance break. So this level is 265. And if 265 breaks, we should get some decent follow through. But we just had a bearish day and we're looking down at support now. And that is 2447. If that were to break, that would be the first red flag for the short term bulls. And that would have us looking down at 2.3 after that.
So Stellar launched Stellar X, a zero fee exchange this week. To start off with, it's going to have fiat and crypto pairs, but ultimately they want to have commodities and bonds and everything trading on that exchange. They've had some good partnerships with the like of IBM, and I read an article saying there's actually 50 ICOs. So if they get more and more ICOs launching on Stellar, then that obviously has a high demand for the XLM token. We've seen talk of Coinbase listing, so yeah, there's plenty going on for Stellar. I really like what they're doing.
So Litecoin has definitely lost some favor out of the major names, but Litecoin on the daily time frame, again, one of those days we just had that really big pump out of nowhere, and the price went from 56 up to 65, so a lot of upside action. But this is more of that kind of pump and dump, not necessarily the dump aspect, but we got that pump with no follow through. So that tells me very clearly that, you know, bulls locked in their profit on that move and they went elsewhere. Otherwise, we would see the higher low form and then we'd drift back towards that high like we saw on XRP, but we're not seeing that on Litecoin. So bulls are still looking for a higher low compared to 54.33. But again, at this point, we've only seen, you know, 2 green days in a row. It's been almost 2 weeks since that's happened. So the bears have the short-term grip, and on the weekly time frame, similar to what was ETH there, that weekly chart is still in a very clear downtrend, and we have to be prepared that if Bitcoin were to head down under sub K, that both ETH and LTC could drop to lower lows.
I think Charlie Lee comes out every time people think Litecoin's dead with a tweet storm. So he put 12 reasons that Litecoin is still relevant. Then we had the SFOX Institutional Exchange add Litecoin last week. Coinbase announced their coin bundle, investing in those 5 assets, which included Litecoin. And Cointext adding the ability to text someone some Litecoin by just knowing their phone number. So I think Litecoin's always going to be around. It's a little bit like Dogecoin. It's just got this huge, strong community of people that have been there for years. I think it's always going to act as the silver to Bitcoin's gold.
All right, so now we've got Tether, and there was an interesting, you know, I don't know a whole lot about Tether, but this whole big lower wick shows a significant sell-off and then significant bounce right after it. And if you zoom into the shorter term timeframes, you can see that there were really 2 dips that occurred. But one thing that stands out, and sometimes we'll get these little blips in the stock market world on the S&P 500 or other major names, and I always look at the volume behind that move to know, you know, is that a real move? Were we really seeing that many orders fire through? And when I look at the 5-minute time frame here, it doesn't look like it because we had other candlesticks with a much smaller range with much more volume. So it's hard to imagine that, you know, we actually dropped down and triggered all these sell orders and then saw all that buying right back up with just a small amount of volume. So it's definitely a bit of a anomaly to me. And I'm wondering if you have any further insight on that.
Yeah, there's been some news lately that one of their main banks in Puerto Rico, the Noble Bank, might be struggling to be solvent. And we see people that should be able to sell large amounts of Tether, and it always have that backup and that buying, equal buying side of it. So when we see a low volume, as you say there, move the price down to 96 cents, I know it's just on Kraken, but maybe it's sort of showing that there's not a lot of people that are on the other side of that trade if everyone was to sell their Tether at once. But again, we've seen these sort of headlines every year they come out, and Tether continues to do its thing. So yeah, follow the Bitfinex Twitter account if you want some theories behind all this sort of stuff. But I really don't think this is a huge issue, guys.
On to ADA. So another tight daily range that's slightly favoring the bears, similar as Bitcoin. We have our high and our lower high, and now we're looking for the bulls to form a higher low compared to 73.5. So 735 cents. And we've got, let's see, the short-term bear break just occurred from an inside bar, and we're kind of following through with that right now. So it is similar to ETH, where we're seeing this little slow fade back down, trying to form that daily higher low. But the bulls have some space to work with where they could still remain within this tightening range before we see a clear bear break. So this is another one similar to ETH, where Bitcoin's probably going to break from its daily range sooner than these names that do have a bit more space to work with.
Yeah, this is one that's pulled back, over 95% from its highs. A lot of excitement, but they haven't got around to launching the actual computational layer, and they're just about to launch the testnet. So there's still lots going on, developing the wallets and the light wallets. We had fiat trading pairs added to Bittrex recently. They're coming out with a Rust software development kit to build dApps. So there's plenty happening behind the scenes. These good projects take time. I've been adding Cardano to my portfolio under 10 cents. So yeah, I think this one is good value now. Well, you're certainly happy buying it under 10 cents if you're happy buying it at $1.
That's for sure. And last, we'll wrap it up here with XMR, where we have a little bit of choppy action. It's not as clear a daily tightening range. So whenever I see that, I zoom around to different time frames and try and find something that looks a little bit more clear. So I can see very clearly some weekly lower highs that still have the bears in control. But we have been seeing a little bit of upside over the last almost 2 months at this point. The low was down at $76, and we did bounce all the way up to 142. So about 100% move. And the bulls just need to get over these weekly exponential resistances, which have been stifling the bulls for, again, a couple months at this point. So key support, I'm looking down at 112.13 and then down to 107.80 with the first couple resistances the bulls need to break at 120.61 and 122.14.
I think we had that spike down last week was due to a bug that could allow for the burning of funds, but the community got together and fixed that up really quickly. There's been lots of issues with people hiding malware in websites. So whenever you visit a website, your computer will start to heat up and it'll be mining Monero in the background, and there's not a lot you can do about that. So they're really trying to fix that so it doesn't happen to people. But it's the number one widely used privacy coin. I don't think Monero's going anywhere. Just like Litecoin and Dogecoin, it's got that really strong community that care about it. It's always going to have some use case there.
And that's definitely something to factor in. You don't really think about that when you're looking for fair value, but we see it in Tesla, where everybody in the stock world, fundamentally, there's tons of people that hate Tesla, but they have this stock following and this cult following that they're going to stand behind it no matter what. And that definitely has an influence on price. And some of these coins and their communities are definitely similar.
Yeah, and putting you on the spot there a bit, Dan, is there any coin that you see in the top 10 that you think, how is that there? Or I don't think that'll be there next year, or anything like that?
I mean, honestly, because the correlations are so strong at this point, no, because I know that, Bitcoin will eventually change the weekly trend. I know that for a fact. It's just a question of when. And when it does, we're going to see money come back into the majority of these names. We will get some more information when the second, bull run does come. And of course, it's not the second, but I'm just referring to my experience in the space. But once it does come, the names that are left behind, we will see names that are left behind. We don't know who it's going to be, but that will be very notable and very clear when they just don't follow along.
Yeah, I want to make a video on that as well, because we've already seen some get as high as, I think even number 5 that aren't in the top 20 anymore. So it's going to continue to change, and that'll present opportunities for investing and trading.
Absolutely.
Well, Dan, thanks for joining us as always. And I'm not sure if you're going back to the beach, but enjoy the rest of your day.
It's bedtime. You as well.
Cheers, guys.